Energy Secretary Ed Miliband in the UK has been implementing his belief of his net zero ideas, this whole environmentalist, essentially socialistic um, political ideology, and has been taxing firms, in this case, British Petroleum. They've been taxing them very high rates because he's criticized, well, they're making all these profits. These profits are immoral. He's fairly wealthy himself, and he doesn't necessarily practice what he preaches in his private life, by the way, either. So why would he do this? Maybe he's envious, perhaps. He's envious of people who are successful. But it's people like him that make life harder on everybody else. Now, we are on the precipice of a massive oil shortage throughout the world. And the North Sea, granted, is not like the Persian Gulf, but it's very useful, especially to the people of Norway, well, to the people of Europe in general, but people of Norway, because that makes them an oil exporter, and also the people in the UK, where they still import most of their oil, but they actually get some of it domestically from the North Sea. So it's very important that oil is drilled in the North Sea because it alleviates some of the import pressure that the Europeans face, particularly, like I said, the UK, because it's part of their sovereign territory. But this guy, he wants to tax him so much that British Petroleum, in this case, is thinking about just shutting down. They have more profitable projects elsewhere where they're not being taxed so much, since Britain is such a business hostile place to do their exploration and to drill. So, like always, actions have consequences. You can't just play Jenga with civilization like our so-called leaders seem to do. They pull a block and they keep doing this. They think this is fun, but eventually everything just comes crashing down. Can you imagine if these totalitarians get their way, our so-called leaders shut down the Straits of Hormuz effectively, destroy infrastructure on both sides of the Gulf? If people like Miliband that taxes these firms so that they just said, you know what, screw it, we're not going to produce oil here, or in the Ukraine war, with the Ukrainians destroying Russian infrastructure, going out to the Baltic Sea. So that puts that amount of oil offline, or the sinking or grabbing of oil tankers, or the so-called leaders in Venezuela destroying their oil infrastructure for their own corruption. And so a lot of that goes offline. Do you see what's happening? These so-called leaders, through their own stupidity, through their own irrationality, through what could be fixed if you just think about what you're doing before you do it, and think about long term. What is good for everybody and themselves too in the long run? But they're not doing that. And so it's just this one commodity, oil, a very important part of our modern lives that people really just take for granted. I'm afraid people are not going to take that for granted much longer. And you're about to find out how expensive everything is going to get. And possibly, if this thing continues, if we're talking about shutting down oil production, partly in the North Sea, and the Persian Gulf, and in Venezuela, which is going to take probably a better part of a decade to repair. With oil prices getting really high, you're talking about some parts of the world not even getting oil at all. Supply chain steps break down. You're about to find out just how important that is. And something like the North Sea that Miliband just doesn't seem to understand. Yes, it is a very profitable venture. There's a lot of investment up front. It's very risky to do this kind of stuff. You're talking about technical know-how and everything else. Of course, they're going to profit from that. They should profit from it. But I mean, you get these idiots that just, like I said, play Jenga with civilization, thinking that, well, I'll just pull these blocks and it won't come crashing down at some point.